This presentation aims to explore the play Antigone written by Jean Anouilh through the feminist lens, and to analyze using a variety of social and historical perspectives. First, we will define the historical perspective that we will use, and we will then explore the female characters of Ismene and Antigone. Next, we will examine the male characters in play, specifically Creon, Haman, Jonas and the guards, and Polonius. This presentation explores female and male characters separately to determine their position in society. To begin, we will establish a specific historical and social perspective that we are taking. We will make interpretations based on the events and the situation of France during the 1940s, which is when this play was written. During this time, the Nazis occupied France, and the French population was completely destroyed by the Nazis. Also, during the war that happened during the 1940s, females began to have the ability to enter the workforce where only males worked before.
Ismene, as presented by both the Prola chorus member and Antigone, is the epitome of the ideal female. Repeatedly, Antigone contrasts herself to her sister, an act that always leaves her envious of Ismene's beauty. For example, in her youth, out of jealousy, Antigone would daub her with mud and put worms down Ismene's neck. And once, Antigone tied her to a tree and cut off her hair. Such beautiful hair, with all those lovely sleek locks hanging round her head. Being the protagonist of the play, the praise that she, amongst many others, including the prologue chorus member, the nurse, and Haman, gives the fair-haired, beautiful, happy Ismene, therefore positions her as the archetype of the perfect woman. And having the female, whom all other female characters aspire to be defined by her beauty, it can thus be inferred that perhaps during Anouilh's time period, women are treated as the same. They are valued only for their physicality. Of the many interpretations that can be made of Antigone's character, two will be discussed today. The first is the prevalent one, the literal interpretation of the text. Antigone defies conventional gender roles. She is rebellious, opinionated, determined, and even on equal footing intellectually with Creon, as she is able to eventually sway the argument in her favor, getting the death sentence that she has so welcomed. In this way, Antigone breaks away from the 1940s standards for females, weak, docile, inferior to, and an accessory for males. For this reason, Anouilh's portrayal of Antigone can be perceived as challenging gender stereotypes and thus is in favor of feminists. The second interpretation builds off of the great contrast between Antigone and other female characters, since, as the nurse explains, Antigone is, not like the others, preening in front of the glass and putting rouge on her lips and trying to attract attention. The times I've said to myself, my goodness, this child isn't vain enough, forever in the same dress with her hair all over the place. The lads will all be after Ismene with her curls and her ribbons, and this one'll be left on my hands. This unique physicality of hers is a quality that will be examined in great detail later on. Above, the nurse describes Antigone as bearing an appearance that greatly differs from the norm. As the prologue chorus member states, Antigone is but a thin, dark girl. These characteristics of hers only hurtle her further and further away from her sister Ismene, who we have established earlier as the embodiment of the ideal woman. As a result, her identity as a female, and thus her being representative of the capabilities of such a gender, is made more ambiguous. Throughout the play, Antigone is characterized in 4 different ways: what she looks like, how she describes herself, how others describe her, and what she does. The first 3, as it has already been explored, only establish her difference with the general female population. The last, however, does the same, as well as developing her likeness to males. After all, the actions she takes, her fighting for and dying for her ideas, as Ismene so explains, is something only men can do. Therefore, with the 3 methods of characterization only blurring her identification as a female, and the last attributing her character to males, can she not be said to be closer to being a male than female? If it is not to that extreme, then at the very least she is a special case and cannot be representative of all females. As a result, her rebellion against her king, which is commonly interpreted as being a display of female power, too, cannot be applied to all other females, as it is in the literal interpretation. For this reason, Antigone can be viewed as a play, like many other works of that time period, to be conforming to the female inferiority stereotype. In addition, even if Antigone is to be still treated as a female character, her desire to be like Ismene is voiced on numerous accounts. For example, she describes herself as being so dark and thin, and Ismene as being pink and gold like an apricot. The diction that she employed in her portrayal of herself, which is dark in tone and bears connotations of being impoverished, pitiful, contrasts greatly with that which she uses to describe Ismene, which is colorful and denotes wealth. With Ismene playing the part of the traditional 1940s female, such a wish asserts Anouilh's Antigone as being in accordance with the societal norms for females. Moreover, childhood imagery is repeatedly used. For example, Antigone uses a child's sea-sized weight, has a childlike body, underdeveloped as a woman, and in the exchange between the nurse and Antigone, during which both stress Antigone's lost youth, "I ought to give you a good spanking, like when you were a little girl. When you cry, I feel like a little girl again, and I mustn't be little today." Recognize that in youth, both males and females partake in similar activities, learning and playing, while in adulthood they walk a distinctly different path. Males enter into positions of power, and females play the part of the submissive. Thus, as Antigone yearns to return to times when gender separation is not as clear as it is in adulthood, the incorporation of such imagery too serves to either develop the ambiguity of her gender or emphasize the great distinction that exists between the two genders in her society. Additionally, the reversal in the positions of Anouilh's Creon and Antigone from their original roles in Sophocles' version further smudges the defined gender of Antigone. In the original, Creon is clearly identified as being wrong, and Antigone right. This is most notably achieved through Sophocles' crafting of characters, Tiresias, one of great moral authority in particular. On numerous occasions, he appears to warn Creon of the implications of his sacrileges. Resultantly, his absence from Anouilh's Antigone can be received as being a method by which, compounded with Antigone's insufficient justification of her actions, Antigone's innocence is made questionable and her guilt all the more possible. In this manner, despite however subtle, Creon and Antigone's roles have been swapped. Furthermore, such an exchange is again suggested through Anouilh's Antigone's realization of her wrongfulness. When near death, she reveals, "Creon was right. I don't know any more what I'm dying for." Similarly, Sophocles' Creon comes to believe Tiresias' prediction concerning his order of Antigone's death, and decides to revoke the penalty, but does so too late, a parallelism that further supports the idea of a reversal of roles. Though the same could be said about it hinting at Anouilh's support of females, as Antigone, a female, has in his version risen to the ranks of Creon, a male. However, in keeping with that, she has continuously been described as being boy-like in both appearance and actions. Actions, which its meaning explains as only being all right for men to perform. The first interpretation is favored. That is to say, Antigone is a demonstration of the unwavering passions that individuals possess and may die protecting, rather than being an illustration of the independency of women that is, in the 1940s, too often overlooked. And, if a gender must be assigned to Antigone, she, or better, he, is, if anything, a boy dying for his ideas. If Anouilh really chose to keep true to the gender biases of his time period, this decision may have stemmed from the social conditions of Vichy France at the time. Having been under Nazi occupation, the French, in a sense, is like the minority group, women, as they are each individuals, but another similar yet slightly different group, which is the Germans for the French and males for the females, seek to dominate them.
The relationships between the male characters in Antigone are reflective of the relationship between the French population and the Nazis who controlled them during the War of 1940s. Each male character in this play is under the power of another. To begin, it is seen that although Creon is king, he does not have the ultimate power. As Antigone criticizes Creon of his twisted ideas about the meaning of happiness, Creon exclaims, "The room's full of people. They'll hear you." When the chorus asks Creon if he has the ability to use his power and save Antigone from her death, Creon replies with, "The mob knows already. They're all around the palace, yelling. I can't turn back." Although not explicitly seen, Creon is always conscious and wary of the opinions of the people who he rules over. It is clear that Creon does not want to leave Polyneices' body unburied, and he does not want to kill Antigone, but his will is suppressed by the citizens. Secondly, Haman is under the power of Creon, as Haman cannot save his love, Antigone, and even when he offers his life, Creon does not change his mind. Haman is powerless. It can be seen that Haman possesses feminine qualities. He is undoubtedly weak and emotional as he begs his father to save Antigone, using the words "help" and "let go," but his words are futile. Haman's characteristics and the choice of words conform to the biased views of females. Next, the guards and pages are under the power of Creon, as he is a king and they are his subjects, and they follow his command. It is important to note that Jonas was not only under the power of Creon, but when he is supposedly holding Antigone captive as she awaits her death, Jonas is also under the power of Antigone, a female. Jonas accepts the bribe of a gold ring from Antigone, and writes a letter for her, placing him under the power of Antigone. The character of Polyneices is described as a male character that conformed to societal norms. When Creon reveals to Antigone the true character of her brothers, Eteocles and Polyneices, he asks Antigone, "I suppose you were impressed by the first cigarettes, and their first long trousers." Then they start to go out in the evenings, to act like men. Before Polyneices dies, he is portrayed as society's typical and ideal man. After he dies, he is left unburied on the ground and described as rotting flesh. This symbolizes a changing of society's views during the time period of the 1940s, as a view of the ideal characteristics of males literally rots away, and new ideas of the differences between male and females emerge, and females began gaining little but more power in society. This ambiguity of the male and female characteristics of Haman, the ambiguity of the status of power between captor and captive in Jonas and Antigone, and the symbol of Polyneice's rotting flesh, all relates to ambiguity of the power that women had during the 1940s, as women gained more power and began to enter the workforce during the war, an area most dominated by males. In this presentation, we have explored two main ideas: that while both male and female characters conform to society's ideal views of their respective genders, Haman's character traits and Antigone's character traits and her interactions between Creon and Jonas blurs the lines that separate gender. Also, the idea that each male character in the play is under the power of another. These 2 points reflect the events that happened in the 1940s, where females began entering the workforce and where Nazis occupied France. To summarize the arguments made, a piece of art and a song that embodies the main ideas contained in the video has been chosen. In this painting, it is difficult to determine the gender of the child. The music that you are listening to is a remix of the famous piece for Elise. Both the painting and the music emphasizes this uncertainty and change in gender roles.